Okay, see how this goes today. We are going to give this a go. Where are we going? Look. Okay, so no promises on today being a productive stream, but let's see. So, I'm like, geek. Hello, how you doing? Thank you, appreciate it. I'll be very honest. Of all the days to stream, yeah, yeah. We'll have to see if I even make 2 hours today because I'm not sure I'm not entirely sure I'm up to this today, but we'll see. Um, it's important with this, especially where I am with this now, to not lose my motivation and not lose my energy. Um, just yeah, I think you of all people know how some days it's just not where it needs to be. Knee is hurting as well, which is not helping. But anyway, cannot complain. Need to move on. Um, so yesterday was an interesting conversation that didn't yield any code. It did yield education. It did yield reflection. And I'm questioning the design of what I've done so far, in that I see the benefit in doing. Um, well, thank you very much. Good morning. Hope you are well. Um, I can see the benefit in going with what Nest was kind of proposing, and I do feel better for having the education as to opening my mind to the idea of that a optimistic lock is not necessarily something to do with the database. It's a concept beyond the database. I get that I essentially am dealing with that anyway, with the ones where I am date checking, but that a version number is probably a more solid way of saying this entity is on this version. It should align. That being said, that's hit me a little bit in terms of design. So it's sapped my energy as well, which is not really a good place to be when I'm like, I don't I don't want to hit challenges at this point. I want to make progress. So as much as I'm not feeling this today, I feel it's also important to do this today for that exact reason. All right. Sorab, hello. How are you doing? Welcome in. Um, you know, it's easy to give up on side projects. It's easy to quit. They are side projects. They are not your work. And if it becomes mentally draining to do a side project and it's affecting your work, then you 100% should stop doing the thing that is draining you. But I think it's important to push through this a little bit today. Um, I have been considering what the versions mean. Is it a good change? And I think it is a good change. I think it will be a positive step forward for dealing with idempotency going forward. But I do not think the software is in a good place to support it, especially in this particular feature. I think this feature is misplaced, which makes this messy. How much help do you take help from AI in your projects, like in a percentage? Um, I mean, I'll hope that anyone call me out on this, but I would say, well, hold on. Let's define help. Um, if we define help as any form of search, which they are being, tuned to do now, then I would say anywhere from like 40 to 50% of help. If I'm asking the AI to do the thing for me, I would say less than 10% of what I do involves asking the AI to do it for me, um, to guide me in that respect. Um, how we're defining help. It, again, Google search has been replaced a little bit by AI. Um, but I'm not asking the AI on a frequent basis to help me. In code, I'm using it more of a time saver where it knows what I'm about to type. Therefore, I'll tab it in because it's got the patterns and stuff there. Stack Overflow is forgotten now thanks to AI. Also, hi. Phil Shamel, hello. Hope you are well today. Well, I think AI cuts through the noise that Stack Overflow unfortunately has. I mean, Stack Overflow as an idea is a great concept, but Stack Overflow does not move with the technology the same way as AI can kind of filter. Um, so yeah, I think it's well, I would say I do not heavily lean on AI. Um, I think it's a skill, just like anything else that you should refine. Um, learning how to ask questions, to find information, to understand things, I think is really important. Not just following what it tells you to do. But yeah, so after yesterday, I did not get anything done on the project. Um, I made no further progress, but um, I feel that what it revealed was more of a design issue than a um, than anything else. So thinking about the versioning, considering what it would mean to introduce a version against the events, or more likely against the entities, not necessarily the event, the entity, made me do a bit of review. Now, initially, I had resisted putting teams in tenant management because it's not necessarily a team concept. It is more of an organizational thing, right? But at this point, are those two things actually inseparable? Potentially not. There is still things like projects and stuff. But one of the things I've said from the beginning is that this project um, is uh, this layout is not set in stone, right? This is not the um, I'm not set on this being the path forward, right? I wanted to change it. Um, there's a new attack vector called indirect prompt injection attacks. Hmm, interesting. I have built a product. Do you mind giving a short feedback about the area design? If you feel that I can do, I'm happy to look at something as long as it doesn't trigger um, my bit defender. Um, so yeah, motivation. Side projects are really hard, and we often go through lots of side projects because sometimes you everything clicks and you're feeling comfortable with it and you're moving forward, and then all of a sudden your energy saps, your motivation drops, and the project stagnates. Um, which is why I think this project is at this point it's such a commitment of time and energy that those days I just have to roll with and know that I will be resuming development in a couple of days. I have plans, I have ideas, there is lots to do. Um, I need to do a better job of laying them out for certain, which is an irony considering the product. Um, yeah. So what I'm thinking is to get the version involved in this, the only way the version makes sense is if the user has a version. Because it is a version of the user that is being produced. If I produce, being that I have this entity, it's not really an entity, this user team association, I can't publish a version against this. And when I go to publish the actual event, the integration event, right, when the users' teams have been updated, I don't have a version. There's nothing here that gives me a versioning to align this to. I don't have a user in organization management represented. Um, Now, one of the concepts in, I'm not sure it's DDD necessarily, but one of the concepts I've become accustomed to over the years is that just because a user lives in one area doesn't mean everything that has to happen against that user happens in the same area, right? The concept of a user can exist in many different areas. There's just one source of truth. So tenant management is my source of truth, but I could still represent user in here. But what would I be representing user for? Just a version number? Somehow that feels lacking. Um, so all this to say, I'm kind of considering how would I introduce version? Why would I introduce version? I'm still not entirely sold that version necessarily is at the entity level and more at the event level. If the entity is publishing, if the reason for publishing exists, then the version of the event is surely what matters more than the uh, than the entity from which it came. But you are looking for a version of an entity, not a version of an event. So what I'm thinking through, and the reason I'm streaming is because I wanted to share this kind of thought pattern, um, rather than just keep this to myself and then just do something and say, okay, we moved on. Is I'm trying to consider what does it mean for and I could make progress. I could just go and hack the code in there. I could make the code do the thing I need to do. I think not remove my comment. Can you check it by Google copy element bot? Um, Hold on. Um, It didn't even get as far as me. Come on. It a copy element, that your idea. Like missing images. Um, so the concept is a copy and paste website. Okay, gotcha. This reminds me of this. Tailwind UI is now Tailwind Plus. Ooh. Oh, you've changed the domain. Thank you, Dota. Good morning. Hope you are well. Morning, Mojo. Yeah, it reminds me of uh, this, where you can copy the code. Elementary environment only. I'm not sure what that is. What's Elementor? Not heard of that before. Oh, website builder. Okay. That makes sense then. So you get a predefined component library for, yeah, nice. I don't often use many, um, really? Okay, so it fits into WordPress and WooCommerce, etc. Nice, cool. It looks very professional. I mean, as an idea, yeah. No code page builder, WordPress plugin, cloud available too. Nice. Okay. I mean, mm, okay. I can definitely see that the product would be useful for moving people forward. I mean, especially if you can get a consistent design. So a component library for that. Um, but that entire market is not something I've really paid attention to because I don't like I won't say I don't use, but I don't like creating uh yeah. WordPress has evolved a lot. It is quite different now than it used to be. There's a lot of very good tools as well for building things quickly. Wireframe category also for starters. For developers made plugins, sold them very popular with non-technical people who wanted some flexibility inside. Yeah. Oh, it's yeah, it's massively beneficial. And if you're doing contracting, if you're doing like freelancing stuff, if you can knock out a site in a relatively small amount of time into I'm gonna say Kumar point, the wireframe category, being able to wireframe out something quickly for a client and then drag and drop it together and turn a site around in a couple of days and make several $100s. It's a no-brainer. Yeah. Yep. So what I'm doing today is not very necessarily productive coding time unless inspiration hits me, right? Um, um, but again, what I wanted to stream for is to share kind of the reason why this is a moment where I just don't have the energy that I need to move forward. But as a side project, you it's easy to get distracted. It's easy to just walk away and move on from a side project because it just gets difficult, or it gets like it's so much work. You're a freelancer doing job. I work full time. No, I've never done freelancing. Um, so yeah. Um, what I've got to consider is, now knowing what I know, now having educated myself yesterday a little bit more on the concepts, what does that mean for this software? How much do I have to change to accommodate this, and what benefit does it give me? Um, and I'm um, job reference. Not sure what you mean there. What is that? Um, so if we had to put a version on, where do we put a version? What needs to care about the version, right? Um, Clearly, the other side needs to say, okay, have I seen version 1 of this thing? Yes, I have. Okay, then ignore this, right? Because I'm on version 10. But who and what is the version? Not who. Uh, if I publish the user and I publish the user with the teams, which is an option. So instead of having user teams exist in organization management, it exists in tenant management, and user teams are associated there, then the user publishes and it has the teams list on it, which means if it changes, that's fine. I version the user, right? Just a version of a user. That cleans this problem up immediately. But now I've added yet more behavior to that object. I've added more to this large object of what is a user. A user can exist without a team. So is it right to associate the team? So right now, I'm stuck in this world of I don't necessarily want to code for the sake of coding. I want to make sure that what I'm doing makes sense. Just having the version on there doesn't do that much if you aren't aggregate when you miss an event. Well, it does. It makes sure that I don't reintegrate another event that I've already seen. It doesn't matter about. There's not necessarily a need to worry about missing an event. I'm not using this as event sourcing, right? I'm using this as a um, data propagation as such, and there is the likelihood of an event being replayed, an integration event. You don't care about, because again, it's state. You just care that the version is greater than the one you had. Therefore, it's true, right? It's more true than the one you had. I don't care about version. If version 4 never gets picked up, but version 5 comes along, it should be taken, right? That's, if I was using this as event sourcing, if I was using this as an actual truth of actions, then that would be a different challenge entirely. But I'm using this as state transfer. So what I care about is that I'm not replaying a oh, of course I've lost it. I'm not replaying a previous state on top of my current state. So if I go to view here and I go to receivers, if I have a planning item, right? So planning item has a bunch of data attached to it, right? In here, and I won't be doing this. This is why I'm looking at this now. I need to deal with the idempotency of this thing, right? So if I don't have a planning item, then I'm going to save it, right? If I do have a planning item, has it changed? Actually, this does deal with the idempotency a little bit, because I'm actually saying, does the last updated that's coming in, right, last updated from the object. As I think about this, I probably want to change some of that, but I shouldn't have date added and last updated. It should just be last updated. This check is saying, okay, well, if this message is coming in and its last updated is less than the one we already have, ignore the message. It hasn't changed, right? Because all I'm passing is the specific, I'm passing the data. This is the object data. So if I get an object that was updated last month, come in from whatever reason, like let's say Kafka resets, let's say we restore something that streams out a bunch of data again, right? It's going to stream those last updated on those objects and ignore it. Right, it's not doing it properly. It should be there's no testing around this. This is why I'm looking at this now as idempotency. The idea is that it should check the date, right? But like you said, if it changes, if something else changes, then it will do it. Actually, that's a good point. Do I have a test to say that? No, I haven't got a test around that yet. So yeah, there's a bug there. If something changes, then it'll be fine. Then it'll say, yeah, we're done. Yeah, you're right. But either way, the concept is one of it should check to see, right? So, but again, this is why I'm looking at idempotency. This is why the conversation yesterday was enlightening, in terms of just thinking about this a little bit more deeply. So what I would do here is actually that wouldn't be, it should be more something like that, right? To be more expressive. Um, so if a signed user changes twice, we only care about the last one. Yeah. Well, again, if you try to update, so if you update a user that isn't created, the system's not intact because you've updated. Again, this is the view side of things. This is receiving that event. This just cares about, again, if it gets it and it doesn't exist already, it creates it. This is the first time we've seen it. That's the idea of the state transfer. Rather than using events to describe the system, I'm using the state of the system passed around to recreate the pieces you need in each scenario. Ultimately, events will get used, but not right now. Right now, all I care about is that the data gets pushed to the right pieces. The reason why the eventing, the things that trigger to tell us why things have changed and whatnot, come later. So I don't publish a user created event. I publish a user. Essentially, maybe not, but that's the point. It shouldn't matter, right? So and here, if we put planning item, if we put a version on this, right, we store the version from the event, from the integration event. This code would say if, and actually, um, yeah, this code is completely wrong, but um, um, if the version that we're receiving is less than the version we have, then throw it out. Yeah. Putting versions on does mean that there is less question. Date times can be published incorrectly. It could be published. Someone could put datetime.now, and it's being compared to a UTC now, right? So within a time range, it could actually be uh, um, invalid or valid depending on what we're doing. There's all manner of reasons why the date time could be incorrect. It's not likely to be if the system's consistent, but so right now I can proceed with this concept in most objects. But the reason I'm pausing, the reason I'm stopping is there's a smell. And I need to address that smell. Right. I need to address um, whether this is the right thing to do or there's a lot of logic in this handler. Not, there's not a great deal in there. We need to acquire 3 IDs because we have 3 objects that this depends upon. And then we need to check, do we care about saving it or do we care about whatever? Now this, because of the amount of stuff that's going in here, this probably would get moved to domain service because there's a little bit more logic involved than standard. Normally what I'd do is I'd leave this check in the application layer and then all the rest of the stuff would move to the domain service. That's the way I've been kind of treating it because then the logic and stuff can go in there. Got a problem in Jira when I get automatically assigned tickets, but my co-workers need to assign it to someone else. Depending on their timing, I might get assigned and it overrides who they assign it to. By the way, you probably want to take yourself off the auto assign. Say, is that you want to know about everything that's being created, or Um, so anyway, that's just this particular instance. Yeah. So it doesn't solve yesterday's problem. And I think yesterday's problem is a code smell more than it is unachievable, right? Um, oh, fun support tickets. So you get assigned all the support. I read in an Agile Slack yesterday about making sure tickets are done in the sprint they're assigned. Yep. Assuming we're talking about like work tickets, not support tickets shouldn't be done in a sprint. I think it's cruel and unusual to make a team handle support tickets in a sprint format. Which to me seems problematic. If you take a piece of work, and we're not talking about support tickets, if we're talking about work, I hope not, because that would be really frustrating, wouldn't it? Um, if you are agreeing to a workload based upon estimation, um, then you have a obligation to complete that in the time frame, right? That's the point of it, right? You're meant to estimate your work. You're encouraged to estimate more accurately. You're encouraged to throw out anything that you can't estimate accurately and push back for things like spikes, etc., so you can understand the work. Again, a consistent and understandable code base does make the difference to how accurate your estimations can be. Hi, Arish. How you doing? Forgive me if I mispronounced that. Sometimes my more northern accent comes out. I've had this argument a lot. Heavy rain, awesome. So, um, what are we doing? Okay. I didn't think Teams would hold me up this much. My side is basically pushing work through at the end of the sprint leads to bugs. Yes, 100% it does, which is why you should estimate. Oh, the rather expensive hard plastic mat that I use is cracked and it's getting worse. Apex, good morning. Hope you're well. Um, you estimate your work. You estimate what you can achieve in the 2 weeks. You should invariably hit that goal. I think that QA should not be involved in a sprint. I think if you want high throughput of work, then QA comes afterwards. The problem with that is you end up with a cycle of um, uh, kind of backtracking if you do it that way. So you need QA in the sprint, which means essentially, from a development perspective, you have about 5 days worth of development in any 2 week period. If you want to make sure you've got enough time to QA things, you have to think about planning that out, making sure the work is componentized enough. Yeah, QA is an afterthought. Is that one QA person for us said? I'm not sure I agree that's an anti-pattern. Uh, yeah, QA should not be an afterthought. QA should, if you care about the product, not you specifically, but the company. If the company cares about the product, they want to make sure that the result is exactly expected. However, it comes down to planning. It comes down to making sure you all understand what you're trying to achieve, that what you're pulling in um, um, is achievable. Sprint items can carry over to the next sprint. You shouldn't rush to close. And I don't disagree with that concept. What I'm saying is that better planning and estimation means that that should be the exception to the rule, not the normality, because then you're constantly chasing your tail. But I wouldn't also be looking at 10 days of sprint work in a 2 week period. I'd be looking at most 6 or 7 days of work in a 10-day period. Your buffer can be thrown off by many things, testing it and validating it. I shouldn't take this twice as long, and if I do, there should be an explosion. Yeah, you underestimated how difficult the actual task was. That's the explanation. It's the common cause, or or you have a high churn with uh, disturbance and context switch, which is another smell. Use the 80/20 rule for sprints. Yeah, but clearer requirements, better planning, better preparation, consistent code base, consistent standards help your estimations become more accurate. They're never going to be perfect. Something's going to take you, well, here we go. Receive user team in view, two, two, right? This one I knocked out in 5 minutes. This one I knocked out in 20 minutes, 25, 30 minutes at most, right? This one took a little bit more involvement, but this one is way off estimate, right? It's going to happen. You're not going to uh, get it perfect. Now, how could I have avoided that? I could have sat down and thought through this design more. Also, I added it in this idempotency as a necessity after the fact. So I let myself move the goalposts. What would be my common cause? Legacy code could be one, or the requirements changed during the ticket, not the requirements. I don't fully understand what the implementation involved when I committed to it. Oh, that's um, um, I didn't fully understand what the implementation involved when I committed to it. Um, then, I mean, if you didn't understand what was involved, um, then any estimate was a guess at best and subject to massive churn, and that's going to continue to happen. So the only answer there is you need to make sure that. And again, I realize this is not. It's very easy to talk about this when you aren't working in that situation. It's very easy to say this is how you fix it when you don't know what the code looks like. And that's the common problem with this. This is why people get frustrated with Agile and all these things, is because they don't know what you're working with. And it's great to say, yeah, you don't know what I'm working with. You don't know how difficult it is. But the reality is that it all comes down to better preparation. It does come down to the planning. It does come down to asking the right questions and pushing back on poor requirements and making sure you have a clear understanding of you can ask for this, but I can't deliver this. You need to lower the amount of work coming into this sprint because we don't know what we're going to get tripped up by. What's the smell when a developer says they didn't write any code yesterday because there's no work to be done? Um, I have many words for that one. I'm not going to share them on the stream. Uh, um, I was waiting for a review yesterday. He did get it reviewed at 6:30 my time, so that's good. I'll get it merged this morning. Ah, okay. That's something you said yesterday. Yeah. So if you have dependencies as well, that's going to be tripping you up. So in this case, right, I'm going to say churning. I am churning because I I know that the versioning is probably the right thing to do to make sure there's a clear way forward. Um, oh, you were totally blocked because of a PR. Couldn't get on with anything else. Um, so yeah, the versioning is the right thing to do. The problem is there is nothing in here that I can version. And anything I do is going to be hacking it in. But what I want to do is set a pattern for the future. So, yes, this is damaging in terms of my velocity. However, the benefit to the software is that there will be a more consistent pattern that comes from this, or that's the goal, right? To move forward with that I will be able to introduce and identify how do I put this in place in other things. Uh, Being blocked like that is bad. The key to being blocked is let them know, but don't freak out at them at the same time. Well, transparency and visibility in the process are kind of prerequisites if you want to be productive as a team. People need to be able to know why things aren't moving along. Um, and just because it's it's a little surprising that there wasn't anything else to work on. Well, again, it depends on how you're tasking stories out, right? If you're if you're building, oh, I'm going to do A, and A then allows me to do B. I'll get that. I'll get A merged, then I'll be able to work on B. You have no choice. You are naturally backed up. Um, and this is why it's difficult to work in a team where you're on top of each other, right? If you can work in separate components at the same time to achieve things, then that's how you slice the application. I get the whole vertical slicing thing, but potentially there are pieces in the vertical that can be worked on in parallel. Um, my coworker worked on A, and I needed A to do B, and then I needed my third coworker to okay the work from B while he's working on C. Yeah, yeah, sure, but there are always those. I wish I could fix small things here and there, like improving your pipelines or fixing some lint issues, etc. Um, yes. Um, Depending on the organization you work in, those things will trip up more and cause more work than you really want them to do as well. So anyway, um, yeah. So right now, I am at a sticking point. I am at a my motivation is low, my energy is low. How do I move this forward and not create a load of work, that just feels like work, right? Um, how do I come out of this with a successful result and keep this project moving along, right? Um, the title I gave this video on YouTube is very much keeping motivated with side projects. Because that's what I was struggling with today, right? That I generally give the YouTube video a title that will stick with it. Um, so it's fair to discuss. Um, One of the things that is easy to do with a side project is to just hack in the solution as well to move it forward. And I don't want to take the pragmatic solution this time. Um, it's just not healthy. Like I could move on, but I think at this point I've got enough work in here to want to solve this the right way. And it's the trickier way. This is the trickiest object, really. If I was just working on user, I was working on team, or I was working on tenant, this would be a little simpler because there would be an object from which I could establish a version. In this case, I have an associated list of objects that I need to track a version against. Um, but what do I track the version against? Add live co-authoring multiplayer to work items so you can watch edits from your co-workers live. Yeah, that's definitely the nice to have pile for later, right? All that kind of stuff. They pay you to they pay you to deliver software. Delivering software is everything around delivering software. That's the time spent in meetings, the time spent planning, the time spent preparing, the time spent asking questions, the time spent pushing back on requirements, the time spent documenting and improving the process to make sure everything goes forward. That's what they pay you for. Docs improve speed, reduce tribal knowledge. They are planning. Well written docs improve. Well maintained docs, well structured docs. Sorry, I've worked with too much where it's like, where do we find this? I have no idea. Do you know where the documentation for this is? And then months later, you're like, oh, we wrote a document of this, and you look, go and review it. And it's like, oh, it's woefully out of date and didn't keep up with things because it was difficult to find. There was no association. Um, uh, no, I built an entire project around a document that I was given that was entirely wrong on its assumptions because it was woefully out of date, and I spent time having to check the code instead. I don't think they need the well objective, but I do agree that dots need to be maintained like the rest of the software. And Confluence is the Wild West for that. I'd love to see some of your guys' code bases where XML documentation is useful. I wish I didn't have so many years of experience of dealing with people writing comments that are complete trash and useless to the point where I'm completely skeptical about any quality of documentation. So I'd love to work in the organizations you guys work in where this is feasible. Um, okay. How the heck am I going to solve this? I'm still not entirely sold that the version doesn't exist against the event, not against the entity. But I see why the entity would have the version. Just ask Copilot to write nice comments. Actually, hold on. Let's do this. Um, let's do this. GitHub Copilot. GitHub Copilot chat. Um, what? Delete current conversation. That was not my current conversation, but okay. Um, um, this user team association. Too general. That I'm guiding it down the path of what I wanted to do. I'm expecting an answer there that's not good. How do I say this? It's a Doc 7 style guide. I'm trying to see what suggestion it would come out with to see where it would head me here. So I have a design issue. I want to solve the problem. I think Dota's got your number, Phil. The thing I recently learned of an elegant way to create an approximative 2D rotation matrix. Hmm. That is a kind of code that needs no comments. Yeah, absolutely. I just read that and it just reads like pure English. Maybe. Hello. Thank you very much. Hope you are well. Yes, I am 45 years young today. You finished a trip around the sun. Happy birthday. Stony, thank you very much. 22 divided by 7 is close to pi. Ah. Denying raids. I didn't deny a raid. You only have one viewer? I doubt that. Apex, thank you very much for the gifts. To Fuel as well. Nice. Thank you. I did not turn off raids. The only thing I deny raids for is one viewer. So because those just bug me, which I know is cruel, but I know you didn't have one viewer because I was watching. Um, you can raid one viewer even if you're not streaming. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So that's why, because when I first started streaming, there was a load of that. So it's just like, I appreciate the idea, but I'd rather have, yeah. I've had also my fair share of issues with bots. Well, welcome in. How was the stream? How did it go? I was lurking. I was not paying attention. Watching other people's streams while they're streaming is probably bad form. I'm enjoying the morning streams, to be honest. Yeah. I'm be sad when they end. Yeah. Sad but happy at the same time, right? That money coming in will make up for the sadness. But find a new schedule, stay on it, you'll be good. And then if you haven't been to Maybe Stream before, maybe he's building an application called Barely Fit, and it's well worth checking out. And it's a great stream to be in. More mature than my stream as well, or immature. Not quite sure about that one. Says you must be mature to go in there, but how is my stream? My stream is, yeah, yeah. I oppress people in this stream. There's no swearing. There's nothing. It's code or nothing. That's it. Uh, if you figure out how to get more motivated, be sure to let me know because I don't have it figured out. Well, what I'm doing today is I'm embracing that, right? I know that I'm not doing any code, and I do apologize for anyone looking for me to code. I am trying to code. I'm just trying to get over that hump, and what I'm trying to do is share this moment as some days the motivation just lacks, and some days the project that you've worked on, it just doesn't inspire you in the way that you want it to do. That doesn't mean the project's bad. That doesn't mean the project is worth giving up on. What it means is it's just worth taking a day or two to get your ideas in order and to sort things out. And I'm just streaming it today um, to try and get over this hump. I'm talking through the problem, but yeah, um, I consider hitting the button over the weekend. You gotta hit it when you're comfortable hitting it and being ready for it. Doing it. Again, if you're streaming and you want views, then the schedule is going to matter, right? If you're streaming because you want to hit the stream button and people may or may not come and hang out, then that's good. But I think it's very worthwhile understanding why you are streaming. Also, it's your birthday, so you can chill. This will be the calmest and uh, most chill moment of my day. This morning, my day is about to turn, but we'll get there. Yeah, a group of TV schedule is a good input. Yeah, if you want to stream, a schedule it matters more than anything else, and you got to persevere, right? So people will stream, and they will come. And you'll find your place. Yep. I think I'm happy no one here is being there at the moment. I wanted to stream to try and get me focused. I keep saying pair programming, pairing up, it will help keep you focused if you get the right balance. Coding with others, getting into a productive, uh, even if it's like Pomodoros, it will help keep you focused. I had a friend saying that watching my stream and doing leak code was helping them stay focused. Yeah, I'm going to a conference on my birthday, online, obviously. Nice. Yeah, I'm starting to wish I'd taken my birthday off. I did do last year. I have a brand new Quest 3 there, sat in the box. I could have been playing Civ 7 today in VR. But did I do it? No. Um, oh, I'm getting a VR. Did I VR inspire you? I have way too many VR headsets at this point. Um, Now, game streaming, I do have a game. I actually do have that channel for game streaming. Um, but I just need to find the time to actually stream. And yes, that's deliberate. Um, which one should I buy? Um, Depends on what you're trying to do with it. Um, um, if you are looking to play a lot of games, then you know, you're not a console player, so PC gaming. So the MetaQuest is pretty much is a decent spec, um, clear screens, um, is wireless, so you can use it on its own if you're just doing like stuff. You know, Mojo uses his all the time for um, having multiple screens up, right? So productivity wise, he does that. Um, yeah. Send an email asking what IT spent £350 on. That would be the Dawn Train renewal. Yeah, I should cancel that. It does not. They do not update those courses often enough to, and I'm not overly inspired by the content in it. Or I should try and watch a few more before I cancel it. Pluralsight got ejected this year as well because their pricing went up and their organization of the courses went into a new direction. So I was like, nah, not doing that. Can learn a lot more off YouTube in a lot of ways. You just got to try and spend time finding it. Yeah. I think I worked out why I'm not getting work. Oh, this should be insightful. Really? You are prevented from linking. 1 second. This could backfire, but we'll find out. Hold on. There you go. Now you should. Now you're able to link. Again, I've had my fair issue with. I've had my fair share of trolls and issues over the years. Um, I don't know. That's a fairly professional image of projecting. uh, I can't decide if I should get the unified switch for the 10-inch rack. Why not? It will complete the thing. Mr. Horn, good morning. Hope you're well. Okay, then don't do it, and wonder what would have happened if you'd have got the Unify switch for the 10-inch rack. I know I keep clicking this, by the way. I am thinking through this problem. I am trying to consider my options as far as this design goes. If I have um, um, if I have teams represented in organization management, and I'm associating the user with a team in organization management, I do not have a version of the user. If I move it to tenant management, the association of a team with a user, I can track that there, and I can version the user. But now the teams and the user are linked, and I forward that pattern. I make that oh, it's an object, therefore it must have a version, therefore everything dumps on it. So I'm trying to make sure that if I go that path, that is the right path I want to go down, because it's a lot of changes. I have to move a bunch of code around. I'm not scared of the move. I just want to make sure that it's the right decision. I'm trying to think about what does it mean to update a team for a user? Is a team independent of the user? Is the user always going to be with the team? Is the version of the user there? So if I introduce version, no, not if, when I introduce version, it is tracked. £200 seems a lot for a switch, and £100 is for the required PSU. I got a 24 port 10 gig enterprise switch. Yeah, on mine as well, which is why I want it to all stay the same. um, so there you go. That's the attitude. No regrets. Forward. Exactly. Um, oh, so whatever I do here will set a pattern. Whatever I do here will set something forward, and I've got to be careful. So the idea of this was that I have teams in organization management. Teams are not necessarily related; they're organizational. Now you could argue the same, that they are, organization and tenant are pretty much in parallel. But I also put the permission stuff in tenant management, right? There's more about the tenant, the address, etc. There's less involved in organization management, right? It's more day-to-day stuff. So that's why I'm separating it out right now. Right or wrong, it is the way it is. So I put teams into organization management. Teams and projects, they are kind of just organizational level things. I want to assign a user to, or I want to assign teams to a user, not user to a team. Teams to a user, right? Just because there is a screen, right, that allows me to manage a user, doesn't necessarily mean that it all has to be on user. And I don't want to carry that pattern on. That's one of my fears, is this creating these large objects that are super, super heavy um, with all the information you might ever need about the object. I've felt that pain too many times to want to keep it up. So users, teams, right? Users ID teams. We're posting to that with the list of teams that are going to go on this user. The idea was that in organization management, that's what we'd assign. I could move all these components over to tenant management, right? I can move the endpoint, right? I can move, I can move everything over. However, I'd have to publish the user. That would be the thing. I'd be publishing the user. So if I do this, I've got to consider what does that mean for, right? So if I go to teams, assign users to teams, right? So we went through this. We've created the service over here, team assignment service. We figure out what associations were added or removed, etc. We publish this. We publish the user teams updated integration event, which then publishes the subscribe to from here, where I then go and turn around and publish the user team assignments, which is a user ID with the list of assignments. If I version the entity, right? Let me try and draw this out again, actually. There we go. It's this one. Okay. So again, if I want to track that user A is on team C, then I publish this event, I publish this event, I publish this event. That's what it should be. Now this event gets replayed. I should not update team A and B, right? But if I'm not versioning an entity, what am I versioning? Well, the event. It would make sense. I have a version of the event, right? So to me, that makes kind of sense. It's like, well, this event is on version 5. Therefore, or in this case, this event is on version 3. If I don't take it as a message, just watch for restock. If I move all this to user, if the user is being published and the user has a version, and I put the teams on the user integration event, then I can version the user. Awesome, great. Now that gets bigger and gets bigger. There's more information. These messages can't be infinite, right? There is a limit on what they can actually contain. I've got to think smarter about that design. So version the entity. I have to put everything with the same entity because I can't have version 3 of the user being published with the Teams association event and then version 4 coming along afterwards. Because or you know, I can't disconnect those versions. Version the event, tracking the event versioning would work in both cases, right? Because I can track, have I seen this version of this event before? Yes or no? If I have, then ignore it. But that puts a burden on the other side in that I now have to track the version of the event against something, so the mess comes around. Even using date time, by the way, date time will not solve this one because it's the same problem, regardless of whether I introduce version or use date time. What do I check the date time of? What entity do I check the date time of to validate, yes, I should receive this event? Which means the only good way of doing this is to dump it on the user object. Or the only way that fits both needs is to dump it on the user event and move this around. But I feel like I'm lacking a design there. I feel like I'm lacking some extra knowledge that would give me some more insights and allow me to build a better system. Because that pattern creates, that problem going forward. Planning items, if I use the version on the planning item, then you're going to check the version on the planning item. Now, if I want to break up the planning item information, what do I do? Because if the events that, again, I'm not using this as event sourcing right? I'm not publishing these events as event sourced events. I'm publishing these as integration events. This information is getting integrated, but aligning the versions becomes difficult. And for anyone else coming to the code base, that's another challenge. How do they handle that? What do they do? Like, I've got to make it very obvious and transparent that, by the way, this is a version, this matters. So if you're going to create this object, it has to have something that has a version somewhere along the line. For idempotency. Right? So this is why we're at a point where this is in a lull, because I'm stuck. I'm stuck from a design perspective. I'm stuck from a I don't quite know what I want to look up perspective. Um, and the pragmatic choice here, right, is to just not care. Just move forward and leave this problem for later. Which is to some extent acceptable, but it can't be left for too long because the problem has to be across the board be solved. Everything should deal with the fact that I've seen this before, because otherwise, if one event for whatever reason is played out of sequence, or one event is requeued for whatever reason, again, like you don't. The problem with the distributed system is you don't have full control over all the pieces all the time, right? There are technologies that or techniques that can yield those events coming out again, and you don't want to. Like if I want to replay the events, I want to requeue a bunch of events for a reason, then I don't want to play them back. Or if I do, I've got to have control over them. So it's just understanding that risk. So what do I do? So again, the pragmatic, or not necessarily pragmatic, the realistic way to move this forward is to take this event on this side and store this event, create a receiver for this event, and store that association. Problem solved. Um, every time I get one of these events, wipe out what's there and trust that what I'm being given is correct. Being that it is truth, right? That's what I've got to treat it as. I can't create this as anything other than it is truth. Being said, so I don't want to do it. I just don't want to. Not sure what. So what this would look like would be user teams, This would have a user ID. I'm not going to put an incrementing ID on this one, because if I do if I wipe it out every time and recreate, then it would be harmful to they added. It'd be harmful because I'd be incrementing the IDs all the time. You change the team, it increments the ID. Like if you've got 4 teams associated, you're going to increment 4 IDs. So I just don't think that's useful. So we create the primary key, a compound primary key off of user ID, team ID. Which isn't necessarily bad, because you would honestly, you would look at teams for users and users for teams. So all the time. Incomplete date time. Right. So user teams would be there. That would link this to this object. Date added would just be, that'd be uniform every time. That's useful just because the user could say, "Oh, you've been on this team since this date," etc. Design. Think about what you just said. You said you're going to wipe everything out and re-add it. Date added has no value unless you're tracking that date added from elsewhere. Now, when I publish this, I could receive that event and deal with that. But again, if I get this event again, my team's going to look like that. And again, for the most part, the system right now will deal with it this way. Right? It will just take what it gets given. There's few checks for idempotency, but the system getting big enough that I need to come back around and deal with this now. This can't go too much further because the objects are getting more complicated. The relationships are getting more complicated. Welcome back, Majo. I do not want to put this problem off much longer. So it's more of a case of, I know there's a problem. I know there's a design to be consistent around at this point, and now's the time to tackle that part. Just so happens this is a difficult case because it's not a one-to-one entity. And again, if I put this on user, the user integration event is already considerable. User's not, but again, it's more who is the user. Is the team anything to do with the user specifically? Or is it a decoration? Nice. Look forward to seeing that. So, anyway. I wish this answer would just jump out and like smack me in the face like, idiot, this is what it is. This is the problem. This is how to solve this issue. Right? This is one of those moments where I really, really wish inspiration would strike. Um, um, because again, if I put public enumerable period teams on here, public uint version. I mean, yeah, I think we'll be good with up to 4 billion versions of any single user. Um, and then increment the user when I publish that. That's great. I can do that. However, I have to go to tenant management because now that all that has to be done in tenant management because user is owned by tenant. And I have to take all this code. Do I garbage truck? I can still have a different integration. I can still have a different handler for dealing with the teams, right? There's no problems to that. But then my teams um similar to your name problem with tasks, I realize we can't just use camel casing when it comes to our class object for classing classes. Put at in front of class. You can do that. Var. Yeah. You'll see me do that with an event all the time. Then rename it course. If you talk about it as classes and you rename it course, ubiquitous language, make sure that it is actually how you refer to it. Yeah. If you refer to it as class, then rename it course just because it conflicts. That's going to be very confusing because then you're going to have a difference in language between your actual business and the code, which is more dangerous because then you have to translate everything. I'm ordering cake for breakfast. I could go for some pie after you say that. I'm a sucker for blueberry muffins. And sausage and egg sandwiches. Yeah. Pie. So the thing I'm stuck on now is then I don't if I need to update the team assignment, right? The idea the purpose of putting it over here was because I don't need to change anything about the user. I don't need to grab the user. I don't need to say the user's changed anyway. I'm just saying this associated data with the user is changing. If I pull this through and say that that's got to go on the user, and I then version the user, I now have to change the user as part of the yeah. I have to change that to basically be assign users to team, remove user from teams, etc. So changing the user perspective. Uh, Oh, I have an argument for it outside the code. Class is the thing the student is enrolled in. A class is an implemented course, so courses exist across semesters. Course with sections applied to them are the class you take. Right. The fact that you start that with, oh, I have an argument for it. If that's the wording they use, then representing the wording that is used by the business in the code makes more sense, because then you can describe things more clearly when you're talking about problems. And if they're using the right language, if you have to translate, it adds a layer of confusion. So absolutely, I'm all down for referring to it as a course if that's what they're actually talking about. But if they use the word course or class, that you know is a course, but they use the word class when they're talking about it, and you just kind of infer that, you're gonna have to do some translation somewhere. So I know people are tough. People are tough. What's in a higher education program is hard because every school has their own definitions, even in the same state. Ugh. So I think I may have just given myself an answer here. I think that user does deal with this. We do have a separate handler. They're never going to be updated at the same time, so I don't think I have to panic here about this. And we put teams on user. And again, what I'm trying to do here is get rid of the smell. I'm trying to make sure that what I deal with, what I change this to do, feels right, moves the platform forward, doesn't create a bunch of unnecessary coupling, and um, is just as easy to change as anything else in the system. So I think team association does live on tenant management because it is a user concern. I'm associating a user with teams or assigning. And it's one on many. You do not get assigned to a team singular, you get assigned to teams. Which means that this changes. We want to start referring to software like that, sure. We'll get rid of the user and replace them with which. So I'm going to create a nested endpoint folder here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this and move it into there. Right. This is going to hurt for a few minutes, but this is why I'm confident in doing this. So we now take this command and this service. We can call the reported session Salem. It's funny you mentioned that today. So I was watching um watching Only Murders in the Building last night, and there's an actor in it in season 3, and I do this all the time. I don't know about anybody else, but as the shows come on, I'm always on IMDb and I'm having fun looking up people and seeing where I've seen them before and whatnot. Um, good way of discovering new shows. Um, and the one actor in it, um, I can't remember his name, but he has is a direct descendant of the like the chief investigator in Salem during the witch trials. So that's me find the actor. Now I've got to know what was season 3. Where is he? Nope, not him. Not an episode. Uh, where is he? Jesse Williams, former high school teacher, apparently. According to Finding Your Roots, he was he's a direct descendant of Joseph Herrick, who was the constable of Salem, Massachusetts during the Salem witch trials. There we go. So there we go. Okay, so we have the post. Now, this is going to break things because things are not going to be working properly, right, for a little while. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move everything over to the this side of things, right? This is going to break until I move all the relevant pieces, right? We're going to move the services into tenant management domain, services, team assignment service, right? We're going to move the model, right? Everything's moving. Everything must go. Use a team association, right? Let's refactor this. Let's do that. Let's get rid of that. Why was that security endpoints users? Did I get a really weird namespacing on this? I did. Somehow I renamed that to security. Okay. Okay. Let's remove that part there. That stops that breaking. In tenant management, we're going to need to add that domain service. Add domain services. That's that. I must drop off, but I'll be streaming after work around 6:30. Apex, thank you very much for the support. As always, thank you very much for the gifted sub to Fuel Snabble. I will do my best to come and hang out with you later. No promises. Apparently, I'm gonna do things with family and stuff on these sorts of days. Um, but have a great rest of your day. If you haven't followed Apex yet, I highly recommend it. His stream is super chill. Um, he's building a game, and he's been working on. I was watching him do unit testing the other day, which, if you are doing game dev and unit testing, I have much respect. So Apparently I have to be loved today. I'm not sure. I got a text from my daughter. Okay, so we're going to move these specifications out. They go to this domain, right? And we need to move that object out now. User team association, that is in there now. Let's make sure we are aligning namespaces. This is where this tooling has come a long way. This, 20 years ago, this would have been a much more intimidating move. It would have been much more challenging to get this done. Subscribers, user teams updated. I'll take that. Application, subscribers, user teams updated. Refactor this, adjust namespaces. Sorry, Liquid's going to Civ 7 time. Move the event from organization management to event management. Refactor this, adjust namespaces, next. Team assignment service, user teams updated. There we go. So that's not actually complaining anymore. It's just getting all sorts of confused. We're going to move this into a different context. We'll move that in a second. Okay. See how we're going. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move all this around, right? I'm going to move the context. And yeah, this isn't something I'm doing lightly, right? This is not something that I'm like, oh yeah, this is fun. I can do this, right? This is definitely intimidating. What's more intimidating is I don't have a context in here, apparently. Oh, I do have that. Oh yeah. They don't live in domain, they live in infrastructure because these are, yeah. So yeah, this would have been way more intimidating originally. However, my comfort with the code base, the consistency of the code base means that I trust that what I'm moving around here is not going to bite me. Right? I don't feel that I'm going to be broken here. So if I move this to tenant management domain tests, let's do that part first. Paste that. Refactor this, adjust namespaces there. Take the global usings. And delete that. And then move substitute. That moves that. So I'm moving everything into domain service. I realize that. Well, the core of what I'm doing is not changing. the where I'm doing it is what's changing. Right. So that's all done. So in theory, we have most of a build. Okay. So yeah, I've got rid of all the errors. So now, things like the script to create uh, that needs to move. So I've got user team associations here. I want tenant management there, and this becomes 1. Okay. Let's copy that. Let's go over to here. Tenant management. Paste that. Oh, apparently I executed already. Okay. And organization management, I need to drop that table, right? Because that ain't good. Now, what changes here is, unfortunately, going to have to wait. I have breakfast to eat and a busy workday to get ready for. However, this doesn't happen the same way. This becomes a user publisher, right? And instead of publishing a user team assignments integration event, we publish a user and we update the user to have those teams associated now. This way we can introduce version because we can increment the user version when we change something like this. What I've got to be careful of here, now that the design I've got in my head right now means that I don't want to make it that you can forget doing this. That's one of the big challenges, right? So I've got to figure out, okay, what events increment that version? Why, how do they do that? I don't want to make it problematic, but moving it to the user does make more sense. It does feel a bit better. We just got to make that more consistent. So that's what I'll work on either later today, likely not, but maybe. And I will continue my efforts to move this forward. If you are new to the stream, if you've not been here before, I'm developing a project management and planning application that has been in development for over a year. And this is kind of just one of those days where inspiration is not hitting me very hard. So I will continue this tomorrow. But yeah, some progress. Get that wired up and things will start to make more sense. But anyway, that's going to be me for today. We're going to raid in the name of raiding developers who stream. I'm going to raid someone that maybe tried to raid the other day. I'm going to copy and paste the name. This is Slug Dragoon, not Dragon. Building a video game in Godot. Very nice looking game. A little dungeon crawling 2D pixel art sort of game. Looking very good. But I'm going to go get breakfast. I'm going to start my day off. I'm going to have cake and coffee for breakfast. So thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for coming hanging out. Thank you for the birthday wishes. I will be back tomorrow. I'll see you again soon. Take care all. Bye.